Hi, this is a quick reply to, well, quick reply to Shadiversity regarding his cradle draw or shad draw or whatever. He's asserting that the people will say that it's impossible and he's proving them wrong. He's being very dramatic about it. I'm going to try to explain what he's misunderstanding and why people don't do it. Just quick intro. Historical methods of shooting are using the Mediterranean draw, fingers on this way, and shooting from this side. Or, alternatively, I'm not going to turn around the arrow, just ignore it. Shooting on this side with this draw, the thumb. This is basically because you want to utilize something called the archer's paradox. It's a pretty complicated thing, and I would ask you look it up on your own. Basically, it means, it means that if I aim down the arrow like this at the target, when I hit the camera, if I try to aim down my arrow like this, I won't hit it. What I should do is aim using the string and the back of the bow. So the arrow against the bow should be completely to the side. So when I'm doing it like this, I don't aim down the arrow. I am using string and the bow. Now this kind of actually relates to the section he was talking about forehand shooting and underhand shooting. He completely misunderstands that, and it shows that he doesn't try to explain the rest of the section, because it's trying to explain something about the relationship between draw weight on a bow, the spine or stiffness of an arrow, and how arrows arc in the air depending on the distance you're firing from. It's like, if you understand the relationship between spine, draw weight, and arcing of the arrow, you understand exactly what is being explained in that text. It's essentially a method for what reference point you want to use for aiming. Like, there's in broad terms, two methods for aiming in archery. There is using a reference point, and then there is instinctive, intuitive archery, which is you're not looking at the bow, you just look at the target and you lose your arrow. Both of these kind of rely on the archer's paradox, though, and I'm going to explain a little bit why. Using the reference point is essentially the same as using a gun. See in the camera. This is airsoft. But on a gun, you have rear sights and front sights, and you line them up. So clockwise and sideways. That allows you to align the barrel and pull the trigger and shoot something. The same kind of happens when you're using a reference point in archery. You draw back the bow, and you have I can't remember what it's called, but you try to always draw it to the same length. So you draw it always to your chin, draw it always to your ear. So you always draw at the same point, allowing you to use, let's say, the finger here as an aim. That means, the forehand method essentially is for powerful bows. So let's say you're shooting at 20 meters, and the arrow flies at 20 meters completely straight. That means you can just pretty much straight up look at the target, and lose the arrow. Not with the arrow tip, but with this. And you're kind of aligning them completely and losing. So, okay, what is the underhand method then? Well, it's exactly that. It's under the hand. If you have a weaker bow, you're shooting a target much further away, the arrow has to arc through the air. It doesn't fly straight because of gravity. It has to arc through the air. So if you're shooting a further away target, or you have a weaker bow which arcs more at the same target if you're a weaker bow, it arcs in the air. So you have to raise your aim up. Okay? So the forehand, backhand text is talking about a method for how to aim. But that only works if you use archer's paradox. See, the thing is, it works, the archer's paradox works, because you have two pushes on the arrow canceling each other out, more or less. Here, it's pushing against the arrow to go sideways. It's pushing at the side. It's kind of like if someone's running and you push from the side, they'll go that way. So it's happening here. It's pushing the arrow to the side like this. But here, when you loose the arrow with your fingers to this side, it's countering that, allowing the arrow to kind of wrap around the bow and fly straight. It straightens itself out after being cleared. Just look up slow motion videos about archer's paradox. It's I can't explain it in detail because I don't have the slow-mo gear, I don't have the... Well, just look it up. It works. Same thing happens when you're shooting from this side, using a thumb draw. You're pushing, it's pushing here, this way, and it's here pushing that way. So they're countering each other to give you the archer's paradox, and you can aim straight the way, that way. What happens when you use a Mediterranean draw on this side then? Well, you no longer have that cancelling effect here. You're not releasing the string that way, you're releasing it this way, which only adds the push of the arrow going out, out. So what this means is, when you use the archer's paradox, and you're trying to aim at something, you have a line of sight, and the arrow is going essentially along that, and it kind of goes around the bow, and then it corrects itself in the air, and it wobbles, because it's the spine, it has to do with the spine. But if you have the cradle draw, the thing Shadiversity is describing, it doesn't actually clear the bow. It bounces off and veers to the side. So instead of going like this, it goes to the side. There's a lot of videos showing that stuff. But so why is that a problem? Even though like you got clips of Lars Anderson and the Danish national archery team, whatever, explaining how you can compensate for that. Well, it's a problem because you're adding more variables to your archery. Like if you look at modern Olympic archery, what they do is they have a very complex bow compared to historical bows. You have something called a cutaway here, or an arrow shelf or whatever, which allows you to essentially shoot from the middle of the bow. It's not going to the side, it's in the middle exactly, because there's a cutaway like this, which allows you to completely, well, essentially completely bypass the archer's paradox. So Olympic archery is about minimizing the variables in your archery. You always want to shoot the exact same way, exact same draw distance, exact same arrow weight, spine, same draw weight of your bow, same distance. So you want to get millimeter perfect accuracy. And to do that, you minimize all the variables. So you draw to the throat, not to the chin, to the middle jaw, because you don't have the archer's paradox to worry about anymore. You minimize all the things. And you kind of want to do that with historical archery as well. You want to take away as many random variables as possible. So when you're aiming like the forehand or underhand method, you're just compensating for height, the vertical plane. You're correcting for the drop of the arrow. But if you're shooting like this, with the cradle draw, let's call it that again, like this, when the target goes further away from you, and you have to correct your height, that's not enough. You also have to correct for the sideways drift. So you're not going the upwards or the vertical plane like this, you also have to correct on the horizontal plane. So when you're shooting at a really far away target to exacerbate, let's just give a comparison. Historical draw using Mediterranean grip, a close draw would look like this at you, and a far away target would look like this. I'm compensating by just going up, assuming no wind or anything. With the cradle draw, you not only have to correct for the height, you also have to correct for the sideways drift. So I have to do like this. So actually, I'm not aiming upwards, I'm aiming sideways. See where that's a problem? Like you're adding not only just the y-axis, you're adding the x-axis to your aiming. Like you're just making it more complicated. You're just making it more complicated. You are just making it more complicated for yourself. So when you shoot a faraway target using the cradle draw, you can't use your hand anymore as a reference because your hand has to be here. So you're looking through your bow now. You're looking through your bow. You don't have any. Like maybe you could put a reference on your arrow, I think. That's kind of confusing, I think, because you already have a great reference on your hand. And like, what the fuck? It's just, you just make it more complicated. And it gets even worse when you like think about intuitive archery, like the stuff Lars Anderson supposedly does. Because the reason intuitive archery works is that you have this sense called, when you're aiming using reference points, you're kind of using physical points in the air with your sight to line them up to get perfect accuracy. You're using your eyes to get accuracy. With intuitive archery, you're kind of not doing that. You're doing something different. You are using your sense of, I think it's called proprioception. Essentially, if I close my eyes and hold up my hands, I can always tell where my hands are in relation to each other. It doesn't matter where they are. That's just my physical body telling me where they are. That means that if I have a bow and I create in my mind a line between my fingers, I can extend that line wherever I want. That means I don't have to look down my bow like, okay, I'm using my hands. No, I can just draw the line between my hands, look at the target, and loose. I can make the lines from my hand and from my sight intersect on the point of impact and just shoot. That's essentially intuitive archery. That's why, for example, you can play VR games with archery. You don't have to look down in VR games, down your sight like this. Like, you can just... I'll try to edit in a little section where I was doing a bit of shooting. And the funny thing there is that I have Oculus Rift, and in the Oculus Home there is a bow called I think it's the Commoner's bow, and it's a terrible bow. It's a terrible bow, but the shooting is kind of fun. It's a terrible bow because the game does not simulate Archer's Paradox. So when you have the bow in your hand like this, if you aim like this correctly, using the string and the bow, essentially your two hands, as your proprioception aiming, intuitive archery, you will miss. Because they just went, okay, you're pushing the arrow, so the arrow is going forward. So the arrow is going forward from here when you lose it. So in the Oculus Rift Home, you have to aim using the arrow, which if you start just shooting quickly, doing intuitive archery, you will start missing on targets that are, missing on targets that are further away. That just happens because you can't compensate for that. You have to actually aim down the arrow or then figure out here. It's kind of bringing me back to Lars Anderson. Like, why does he shoot like that then? If it's less accurate because you don't have the sense of proprioception anymore and you can't use a reference point, why does he aim like that? Well, the arrow doesn't just clear off at an angle. Like it doesn't just, in a straight line fly like this. We normally would fly like this, straight line. It kind of flies sideways like this. It goes flying doing like that. I'm going to link another video. Or I'm going to link a video below by Red Dragon. He shows that kind of from the rear, how that works. It's kind of interesting how in the videos that Lars Anderson does and Shadiversity did, he doesn't show a single view from the back shooting the bow. He doesn't actually, like the video Shad does, he doesn't actually lose a single arrow, I think, which is interesting. Because archery is about losing arrows. It's not about drawing a bow, it's about losing arrows and hitting targets, essentially. And he doesn't actually show any of that. Because when you do that with a historical longbow, which doesn't have an arrow rest or cutaway in the middle, and you get the doubled push to the side, the arrow doesn't just fly like this, like I mentioned, it flies like this. So it's drifting through the air like this. And you can compensate for that with bigger vanes, but it's wasted energy. Now, why would Lars Anderson like that? Why would he train to shoot like that? Well, he's a trick archer, isn't he? He's not really he's not hunting. He's not trying to kill people with his bow and archery. He's just trying to hit targets. Paper bullseyes, tin cans. What has he shot? Candles. When you think about it, what is it easier to hit something with? The tip of a arrow coming straight at you, or a slightly sideways line? It's like, which is easier? If you miss like this, if the arrow is flying a little bit sideways, you could still hit. I mean, if you just want to hit something and you don't care about what part of the arrow you're hitting with, then yeah, it's kind of actually easier at short ranges because you can just compensate. You can learn to just compensate for that. But if you actually want to, this is actually a good segue to my second point. The second really big problem with this draw and this loose is power. Essentially, let's talk about it. When the arrow is released in a proper manner, it flies straight and true. It wobbles in the air from the archer's paradox, but it's flying and pushing straight on. So if you hit me like this, it will go straight through. But if you are using, you're not accounting for archer's paradox, the arrow will have a sort of sideways turn to it. It'll be loosed and go like this. Even though it's flying forward, it's doing kind of sideways. So why is that a problem? Well, it's wasted energy for starters. It's going slower. It's not as fast as an arrow that goes like this. An arrow that goes straight has a smaller profile and has less wind resistance than an arrow that's going kind of sideways. Then on impact, there's an even bigger problem. This is going to be complicated again. Let's talk about bow hunting. I'm going to use this as actually that's terrible. This is going to be a magazine. Let's pretend that this is an animal. This is an elk. This is a buck. This is a moose. Here are the horns, the little protrusion here. The back here is the butthole. Yeah. So the animal is going like this, and you want to shoot it with your bow and arrow. You're hunting it. Okay. What are the best ways of hitting it? Like to get a guaranteed kill shot, to not cause it misery as it runs in panic and it bleeds out and it's in much pain. How do you get a quick, clean, humane kill on it? Well, you want to aim for about this section, because you divide it into threes: the top, the middle, and the bottom. In the bottom, there's more blood because of gravity. And here also in the front, there are the two lungs, usually, and then the heart. If you get both of the lungs, the animal will die very quickly. No suffering, no pain, very little. It's quite a humane kill. So heart, lungs, good kill. But if you don't have this sideways, exact sideways, you're going to have a hard time. So if you're shooting from the front, you're not going to take the shot. You're not going to try to shoot it with a bow, because you're going to just hit the shoulders or the horns or the head or the skull. Hard bone, it's not going to kill it. Kind of same thing with the rear view from the butt, because lots of muscle but no vital organs. It'll just run off and suffer. You're not going to catch it. You're going to have to follow it for fucking kilometers. It's fuck that shit. So the best shot is from the side, but sometimes you have kind of angled shots like this. Those are called quartering to and quartering from. Essentially, it's quarter to and quarter from you. Those shots are considered possible, but difficult. Essentially, for a simple reason. When you aim at something, you're looking at the front. You're like trying to hit it here. But the arrow doesn't just, puncture the skin and then you get like, oh, I suffered 30 points of damage, now I'm dead. No, it has to actually puncture organs, blood vessels, cause me damage internally. So when he punctures here, he goes through and it causes damage to my organs on the inside, which causes me to bleed out, to have shock, stuff like that. But if I'm, quarter to and quarter from, if you just aim for the same point here, you can actually just be, the point of reference in the back changes. So you could be missing my internal organs entirely. That's kind of I really recommend, again, you just go reading into bow hunting and quartering to and quartering from shots, because of, I'm not a bow hunter. I don't hunt with a bow, but I understand the concept. So let's kind of reel it back into like historical stuff. Let's say you want a kill shot on a human being. Let's say you want to do a liver shot. The liver is beneath the ribs, so about here, but above the diaphragm. So it's this small part here. You hit me with a bow here, with an arrow here, I am dead. I'm instantly dead. I can do nothing. So you kind of want to hit me here, like this, with a straight arrow. Punches through, kind of like, let's say that much penetration, goes through, goes to my liver, I am done. I'm fucking done. I am dead. I cannot do anything. But if you're shooting an arrow that's veering to the side like this, coming, even if it hits the exact same spot, it might just gouge out a little bit of my skin and fat and subcutaneous tissue, and then just come out to the side like this. It's not actually going to, you might not actually, hit the liver. It'll just go out to the side like this, and I'm like, what the fuck? Ow, ow, ow. But I'm not dead. Same thing like if you're hitting like the ribs. If it's coming at an angle, if it's coming straight on, it might puncture the puncture and break the ribs. But if it's coming at an angle like this, it might just dunk to the side. Same thing when you think about like, give me a second, let's get 30 seconds. Where the fuck are you? There. Same thing if we have a armor. Plate mail is, well, an arrow's not going to go through plate mail. Let's just agree on that for now. If you have, well, gambeson might go through, but no, a hauberk, yeah, a hauberk, hits the rings. If it's going straight on, it'll push through from the back like this, because all the mass is behind the tip, most of the mass. Not, well, the point of balance, whatever. It's pushing this way, so it'll go through. But if it's like this, it's actually pushing through the ring, it's pushing the ring to the side, wasting that energy and just, kind of harmlessly getting like that. So if the arrow isn't coming straight at me, but coming sideways at me because of the failed archer's paradox, you're losing a lot of penetration power. So for a hunter, for a soldier, for anyone who actually cares about penetration, shooting like that is going to be quite inefficient. So why are there modern archery enthusiasts talking about, it's fine if you shoot like that. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I can do it completely fine. Well, they don't care about penetration. They don't care about, kinetic energy and momentum penetrating the target, the wound channel. They just care. They have a paper target, a flat paper target. Punches through here. Woo! Bullseye. Woo! You have a tin can. You knock it over. Woo! It hit. You don't care about how the arrow actually hits them, how it penetrates, how it wounds them. So they don't think about it, and it's not a reality for them. So they don't consider it pertinent, I suppose. Yeah, I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna take this thing off. Actually quite comfortable. Yeah, I know it's buttered meal, but I made it myself, so. I just remembered something again. Historically speaking, there's a trick described in Arab archery, how to hunt small birds with a bow and arrow. They describe a special kind of arrow. I think it's no fletchings, and it's heavier on the back. So a normal archer, normal bow, is generally point of balance is in the middle or a little bit forward of center. If it's in the middle, it'll fly quite well, quite long distances. But if it's in the front, it'll penetrate quite well. And then you have the fletchings, which kind of stabilize it. The arrow described in the Arab archery book, I believe, is no fletchings, and the point of balance is quite back. So it's like, let's say, here. So what happens when you shoot it, pew, it flies very unstably, and then it starts going sideways. Flying sideways like this. So it's flying like a stick through the air. And that's great if you just want to hit a bird in the air. There's a flock of birds, you want to hit them in the air, you're scaring them into the air, and then a stick flies through, and 4 birds fall down. Funnily enough, the method described in the Arab archery book is illegal because of, I think Muslim law states that, some law states that, if a bird is beaten to death with a stick, you can't eat it. It's illegal. I don't know why. So that method was described as being illegal, but it kind of ties back to what a trick archer would think. If you just care about hitting a target and knocking over a can, or shooting out a candle, or hitting a target that's far away and really fast, you don't care about hitting actually with the target, with the tip, and penetrating. You just care about hitting it. So having that kind of sideways drift would actually make it easier to. You get more hits, and you get rewarded. Like, yes, I hit it. You can do it again. Yes, I hit it. So it's easier. But moving on, I had other points as well. Let's see what I wrote in my notes here. Oh yeah, line of sight. Something I noticed when I was experimenting with different types of archery was that I was actually doing the thumb draw on this side, and as you can see, it's quite to the side. It's not actually like this. Like the strength of this method of archery is that you're essentially able to see the arrow and the path it flies in, even if you're not aiming down the arrow. Incidentally, in modern archery, why they don't understand archer's paradox as much anymore is because modern bows have a cutaway here. The arrow is loosed from the middle of the bow, essentially. So it doesn't push off against this and bounce off. It's released from the middle, so it flies straight and true. So for modern archery, spine, archer's paradox, all of that isn't as relevant anymore because they have bows which have a cutaway in the middle. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the strength of this method of archery. Let's say for hunting, you're out in the woods, you're going through the woods. You know, there's bushes, there's branches, everything. If you aim like this, you see a target. If you can see it, you have a perfect line of sight here, essentially. Then the arrow is going to follow that line of sight quite closely, almost parallel, and it's going to go through the exact path you see. So if you see a line of sight to like a buck or something, or a little rabbit in the bush, you can hit it. But if you shoot like this, I noticed, with thumb draw even, you're shooting from the side. You don't actually see where the arrow is coming from. You don't see the exact path. So I noticed that I was shooting in the forest, and the arrow would often just hit a branch or a bush or something. It would get tangled because I can't see the exact path the arrow is flying through. So if you're thinking about adding to that mess by using the Mediterranean draw, the cradle draw or whatever, you're shooting it like this, and the arrow is loosed sideways, you fly sideways, and you're going like this. So now it's a bigger target again, going to the bush and getting more likely to tangle up into everything. So for hunting, it's more inaccurate, it's louder because it's going to make more sound compared to just, you know, I can't probably do it that fast, but the fletchings will make sound when they're flying sideways, and it's more likely to tangle up in bush and branches and everything. So it's just, it doesn't make sense to shoot like that. It just doesn't make sense. Like if you look at like modern primitive tribes today, how do they generally shoot? They generally use the Mediterranean draw or some kind of variation of it, like with a pinch grip like this side. Like the Ishi, the Hadzi, the Amazonian tribes, Papua New Guinea hunters, they usually shoot from this side using this draw or a variation of it. Because if you go into the bush, you're trying to sneak up on something, and you see something, you want to be able to look exactly where it is and just lose the arrow. You don't want to have to start thinking about, you know, if it's actually coming a little bit from the side. Let's say like, well, this is here. So if I'm trying to shoot, this curtain is here. I'm trying to shoot out the window or something. There's a window here. I'm trying to shoot out the window, but I'm shooting like this. I can see out, but I'm shooting into the wall because I can't actually see the path of my arrow. You understand? So you want to be able to, for a hunter, the ability to see the exact path of your arrow is kind of vital in the bush. I think it's kind of interesting, like when you think about cultures that shoot the thumb grip, they generally tend to live in open plains, like the Mongolians, the horse archers. They're on the plain on horseback. They shoot like this because they have all the space around them. No branch, no bush. They're going up open spaces and just shoot. Same thing like in much of Turkey. Korea is kind of forested. Japan is kind of forested. But like when you think about the battlefields generally they fought in, it was more about open fields. Whereas like with hunting, you generally, let's just get off this topic. What else? Oh yeah, I almost forgot about this. Like Shad, when he's drawing his big bow, he's doing this kind of like, oh, I can't let my arrow drop, so I have to correct like this. Oh, okay, you can do that, fine, whatever. But there's better ways of keeping the arrow from falling off. Like if you follow like that. Well, if you look at medieval archery, the Mediterranean grip, there's a simple method for keeping it from falling off. It's described in some, I think it's called a French draw, I can't remember. Normally when you think about putting your fingers on the string, you think of these grooves in your fingers here. But really, what you should do is turn the hand kind of like this, sideways, so that this finger here is pressing down on the back of the nock. That means when you're here, don't fall off, you can essentially hold it any way you want. You can jump. It doesn't go anywhere. Same thing with the thumb draw. Come on. Fingers getting sweaty. So when you have it like this, the index finger again pressing to the side, holding against like this because you're horse riding. So you don't want it to fall off. It's pretty good stabilized. You don't need anything finger kind of here. It holds on its own. So how do you do that with the cradle draw? Well, you press with the middle finger, the middle digit of the middle finger against the bow like that. Holds pretty fine. It's a little bit awkward, but it works if you want to really shoot that way. Yeah. So general complaints about the video other than that. Chad, you're like, oh yeah, I can pull this bow 40, 50, 60 times. Yeah, it's not impossible. The problem with that is 40 draws of a bow, just, draws, isn't actually archery. That's just a warm-up. You're supposed to do that anyhow. Like, you start doing that, like, okay, gotta warm up the bow, the grain of the wood, gotta warm up myself, do a bit of jumping jacks, stuff everything like that. And so, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to get it warmed up. And then there's a problem on top of that. Just pulling back the bow and letting it go back again is not the same as actual archery. Because when you do archery, you are putting a lot of strain on your body, and then you're quickly letting it go. You're loosing the arrow. I'm not going to draw fire this thing. That means you are violently allowing everything to go back to the way it was. Most of that energy goes into the arrow. A lot of it goes into the bow because it makes a sound and it vibrates in your hand. But a lot of that still goes into your body. So when you're suddenly like loose, everything snaps into place. So just, doing this doesn't prove anything. Like, you actually have to shoot the arrow. You have to lose the arrows for it to count. Because you pull, and then you let go, and everything snaps into place. So, I think, like, the muscles you use, I'm gonna get an arrow again. Like, when you look at a classical longbow draw, the muscles you use are the big muscles of the back. Your back muscles. Not like your hand and everything. You're pressing the bow. You're not pulling it. So you're leaning forward, and you're leaning into it. You're leaning into the whole body mass. That means you're using your big muscles in the back. When you're doing, for sure like this, you're using your bicep and stuff like that. Much weaker muscles. When you're doing that thing with like canting the bow, inwards like this, to me, when I'm trying it out, it kind of feels like it's putting pressure on the shoulders. So I think I'm not going to make any definite conclusions, but I think when you start, loosing arrows, the violent jerk could be bad. But hey, it's your shoulders, so do whatever you want. I had other points still. Oh yeah. So much artwork, so much historical artwork about people shooting one way or another. I don't think that's really a proof of anything. Simply because, let's take this example again, the gun. How many TV shows and movies and comics and, all media featuring a gun show a correct method of using it? Weaver stance or isosceles stance or something like that, Stuff like that. And how many actually just show people going like, whatever. Hell, my favorite. How many examples are there of, swordplay being fucked up in modern movies? It's kind of like we don't know anything about the historical context. Like, let's say that everyone knows how to properly loose an arrow. Okay? Then let's say that there's a cultural context that anyone who does it wrong is an idiot. Okay? Or he's a heathen. And if you do artwork and you're depicting people doing something, it could be like a hidden message, like, okay, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. You know, there's so little we know about the context there. I think trying to draw absolute conclusions from it is kind of foolish. I mean, I'm sure people did it. I'm sure people did it in medieval times. Just the same way that people were shooting with guns nowadays, still like this, instead of, you know, a proper stance, leaning into it, to the sides. I'm 100% certain that a lot of people did it wrong, but for people who actually figured out how to do it, you know, like, trained to do it right, I'm pretty sure they would have eschewed it. Like, if you look at modern day hunters, you know, Papua New Guinea, African, Aborigines hunters, they usually always shoot this side with a variation of the Mediterranean draw or a pinch grip or something. Like, I'm just babbling now. Yeah, I think that's about it. I hope someone got something out of this.